Welcome to our monthly roundtable for about LL97 and its impact on you and your business. This is in collaboration with Latitude Compliance and Mark Hertz company. I want to introduce Marty Weisbrod, the CEO and founder of Latitude Compliance.
Hello, everyone.
And Mark Hertz from Mark Hertz company, the founder and CEO.
It's nice to see you all. Pleasure to be here.
And this is Sarah Nekapour, our Latitude Sustainability Manager. Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Banyan. I'm the Executive Manager of Compliance for Latitude Compliance. I've been trained as an architect, been gone to school in City College, then done a couple of study abroads in Europe and a whole bunch of other stuff for climate change governments and urban resilience. And now I volunteer for Open Air Collective, writing a lot of climate legislation, as well as the AIA upcoming board member and sustainability committee member. Together, we've worked on this roundtable event to clarify some of the questions you may have. So with that going, we will start our presentation. So, all right, so this is the table of context. How we're going to organize this event is like 30 minutes. We'll have a little, presentation, and then 30 minutes of the roundtable. And we'll cover a little bit about, who we are, about carbon emissions, a little bit about 97, the law, what are the logistics of that? What are our 13 phases of compliance? And then we'll break out into our roundtable. So I'll start off with this. Marty, tell us about why you started Latitude. What inspired it to begin?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Marty Weisbrod. I'm the founder and CEO of Latitude. But prior to Latitude and in continuation with Latitude, I also run a company called Promont, which is a construction company here in New York City. And I've been in construction development in New York City for close to 25 years. And in so doing, I've garnered a lot of experience, both in the construction industry and development industry, as well as dealing with New York City agencies throughout the entire process. When Local 97 passed, I immediately realized that this was going to be something different than all the local laws that preceded it. This was going to be sort of the behemoth of all laws that would require a tremendous amount of work to be in compliance with. And I thought that it would be a great idea for someone like me, together with the people that work with me, that have experience in construction and in design and understanding the nuances of dealing with New York City codes, that we would be perfectly placed to deal with this as sort of a turnkey solution to this law, which is Local 97. So we started Latitude Compliance a number of years ago, and we've essentially been dormant throughout because we spent all those years researching the law, doing partnerships, strategic partnerships with vendors that would be able to facilitate different aspects of compliance of this law, and subcontractors that would be able to actually execute the things that needed to be done in order to be in compliance with this law. So Latitude Compliance is now going live. We've been live for the past few months and done a number of jobs already. And essentially, we're here to be your one-stop shop of compliance with the Local 97 law and all the other laws built into the Local 97. So that's the idea behind it. And I think that we're strategically placed to be able to execute and have the experience behind us to be able to execute successfully.
Thank you, Marty. So, and now I'm gonna, introduce Mark Hertz. If you can tell us a little bit about your company and how you can help with LL97.
So first and foremost, I'd like to say, Marty, that was very impressive. To be at the cutting edge and to be joint ventured with you is really, with Latitude and Promont, is really an honor and a pleasure. And we don't take that honor or pleasure lightly. That's number one.
Thank you.
Mark Hertz Company has been around a few years, since a particular day in October 31, 1984. So I think it's about 38 years, a little more than that, Mark Hertz Company has been handling your violation needs, your due diligence in advance of purchasing a property, refinancing a property, and anything that you find as a thorn in your side and a headache for you is a delight for us, because that is what we do. Our goal is to enhance the value of your property and return your property to you after we've enhanced that value. On top of that, Mark Hertz Company has started Mark Hertz Associates and Mark Hertz Build. Mark Hertz Associates handles various filings that are needed and compliance, such as benchmarking, which is probably a prelude to Local Law 97, and energy efficiency reports, which is as well a prelude to Local Law 97.
Right.
On top of that, Mark Hertz Associates handles your plumbing applications, your electrical applications that are needed, because some of those things will be needed to comply with Local Law 97. And Mark Hertz Build handles your general filings, whether it be renovation or other things such as that, in conjunction with our architects, our engineers. And we've been doing this. The people that are working in Mark Hertz Company, Mark Hertz Build, Mark Hertz Associates, better known as the Mark Hertz Group of Companies, have jointly hundreds of years of experience and knowledge to which to handle this. And therefore, it's an honor and a pleasure to have joint ventured with Latitude and to be on the cutting edge for this law that the City Council of New York passed a few years ago.
Thank you, Mark. And just so you know, it's been a pleasure working with you so far as well.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to briefly go over our Latitude team. We've also conducted a couple of internships, and we have alliances with many organizations like New York City Accelerator, Passive House, NYSERDA, and etc. This is also Mark Hertz's team, where they're experts in DOB approval and violation removal and everything that Mark just mentioned. And now I'm going to pass this over to Sarah, who will get into the conversation about what is carbon emissions.
Okay, thank you, Adina. So we are going to start off talking about some background about carbon emissions and climate change. And we just ask that whether you're passionate about this topic or not, just have an open mind and be willing to learn about the reality of carbon emissions and how the local laws are working to address carbon emissions. So by keeping an open mind and learning a little bit today, we can hopefully work smarter together in the long run. So when we're talking about carbon dioxide or CO2, that's kind of the key word for today. And with carbon dioxide and other emissions similar to carbon dioxide, what we're talking about when we say traps heat is that these gases emit something into the atmosphere, and it kind of creates a blanket effect, which if you think of a blanket, it's something that's like laying over the city and it can trap heat. And so that's why we have heat waves over the summer and a rising global temperature. And that leads us to the next question, which is, where does carbon dioxide come from? So as you can see here, all sectors emit carbon dioxide. So industrial sectors and agriculture and transportation. But really in New York City, we're seeing that over half of carbon dioxide emissions actually come from buildings, which is why it's really important for the city to address the emissions that come from the building sector. And so going back to the greenhouse gas effect, it's similar to the concept of the blanket effect, where basically these emissions listed here, which are the most common emissions, they trap the heat. And when we're thinking of how to actually address the greenhouse gas emissions, the best way to do that is through renewable energies and alternative energy sources, and also through decarbonization plans. So that's essentially the cure to the greenhouse gas effect. And you may be wondering, how can you even measure something that you can't see? I mean, you can't see gas, so how are we supposed to measure it? How are we supposed to even reduce emissions? And if you really know a lot about emissions, then you'll know that there are both on-site and off-site emissions. And that can make it really complicated as well. There's emissions lost in the process of transferring energy. But really with local law 97, we're only focusing on on-site emissions. And the best way to calculate that is through like looking at your utility bills. So that data does exist there, and that is how we actually measure carbon emissions. And we added this piece here just to clarify that while these local laws and this talk of climate change and environmental changes may be new or may seem new to some of you, really the United States has been fighting against climate change for a long time now. And really the biggest piece of legislation that initially started this conversation was in 1970 with the passing of the Clean Air Act. And since then, there have been vast economic benefits for the country, and there's been improved health in the long run because the air has been cleaner for everyone to breathe. And that's on the national level, but also on the global level in 1986 with the Montreal Protocol. That was the first like international effort to address climate change and to address air quality.
I want to just interject, Sarah, that irrespective of what your ideology is and what your belief is in climate change, I think everyone can agree that we have a big difference in the air quality when you're working in the city, and if you were to take a trip up to the Catskills, for instance, and there's a reason for that. And if you want to illustrate it even more, is you can travel to China, where I've been a few times, and you can go out. I've been in Guangzhou, China, and I went out for a walk. And on a sunny day, the sun was not there. And I thought it was just cloudy every day until I learned that that was actual pollution. So irrespective of what your belief is and, you know, as to whether we can actually impact the climate on a human level or not, the facts are as they are, and you can see what you can see. And that is that we live in a way cleaner environment than many countries around the world. And these laws have gone towards making sure that that happens. So now with New York City taking the move on Local Law 97, while it is a difficult law to comply with and a costly law if you don't comply with it, and probably a costly law even if you do comply with it, at the end of the day, it will deliver a better environment for us and our children. And I think that's an important aspect of it.
Just don't leave out the point that it will increase people's longevity
Yeah.
Great point.
at the minimum.
So the longer we live, the more we have to have a place to live in.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah, there's an idea that talks about how the whole climate change industry is just helping humans. It's not even about the planet. It's just, it's just so you can survive.
As a child growing up in the 1960s, 1970s, I recall very clearly how they would talk about the smog in New York City on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Go to California, go specifically LA, and you will see that. I mean, no insult to California, it's a beautiful place, no insult to Los Angeles, but you will see that smog, which Marty said about China.
Yeah.
It's not like China, but it has its share.
Yeah.
On levels.
And if Latitude Compliance does its job correctly, which we have every intention in doing, in most cases, the investments that you will make into your properties to be compliant will end up paying for themselves and will not only be good for the environment, but in the long run will be good for the economy and will be good for your own personal economy, which I'm sure everyone here would agree is probably the most important reason that you're all here.
So I think that actually brings us to kind of the most recent action on climate change, especially on a global level, and that's the Paris Agreement, which we signed on to, we meaning the United States, signed on to in 2015. And this is kind of the latest global initiative with over 197 countries agreeing to or making a commitment to reduce their carbon emissions. And something we want to note here is that some of you may be thinking, oh, like, didn't Trump get us out of the Paris Agreement? And he did, but now under the new administration, we are back in the Paris Agreement, and for the foreseeable future, it will remain here. So that is why New York City, as a part of a country that has agreed to the Paris Agreement, is now working towards writing all of these local laws and putting them into a place, because that is the only way that we can meet that agreement, by reducing carbon emissions.
And Sarah, just to add, I think you agree with me, that even if President Trump runs again and becomes president again, and this is not a political statement, we, buildings in New York City, are governed by the city council and the mayor, and Department of Buildings and et cetera of New York City. So it really doesn't make a difference what they do on the federal level. This is a city level that we really have to be compliant with.
And I'll even add to that, because technically since 2007, New York City has already been making legislation. So this is not, even if, Trump left, New York City already applied this legislation, and Local 97 is just an addition to these legislation from 2007, and then they got upgraded and upgraded and upgraded. So we will get into that, but so I don't think there's turning back here. It just keeps getting
It's
stricter.
clearly not turning back, and I'm not going to jump the gun, but the laws are getting stricter and stricter as they're coming out with figuring out how to implement the laws, as we've seen in the last few months.
100%.
Okay, so now that we've kind of discussed this background on carbon emissions and climate change, we are going to now dive deeper into local law 97, and I'll pass it on to Adina.
All right, so what is Local Law 97? I'm sure this is like everyone's chatting about this, but really what happens is what Sarah mentioned, it's the first time in history technically that we are taking accountability for our emissions per city, per building. So this is probably the first time this has ever happened, although we dealt with global issues before, climate issues globally before. So what is it? We're talking about a goal of achieving a 40% reduction in greenhouse gases emissions by 2030 and a reduction of 80% by 2050. That's also why you'll see a lot of things that are due by 2024. It's because the 2030 deadline is so aggressive. It's basically any building that's above 25,000 square foot in New York City needs to comply. And there's going to be some exemptions we'll talk about, but they're kind of fake. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So how are you going to do this? There's carbon caps, and they happen within, every, like, there's going to be a deadline dates of every 5 years, which you need to hit that carbon cap. So how Local 97 kind of like breaks it down is there is a building type. So based on your building type, maybe you're an assembly building or you're a hotel, you get compared with similar buildings of that type in that location. So you'll get compared with that. And based on that, you have a carbon cap with that deadline date. And now what we have here is there are some exemptions. There's government buildings, there is going to be NYCHA, or it's community, if you're a place of worship. But even though they're written out as an exemption, it's only until 2030. After 2030, you need to kind of catch up with everyone else. Until then, you can provide like a good faith measure and showing that I had, financial hardships or stuff. But by 2030, that's when you're going to have to be online with everyone else. You still have to make the retrofits to make sure that you can comply by 2030.
And I think I just want to interject over there, Dina. I think that people are asking, if 2030 is the hard deadline, why should I be busy with Local 97 now in 2022 going into 2023? Well, first off, 2024 is a deadline as well, that a lot of reporting has to be done and a lot of compliance needs to happen by 2024. But even if you were to assume that 2030 is the deadline you want to be busy with and you want to be concerned about, realizing that commercial mortgages renew every few years, the mortgage lenders that are going to be giving you those mortgages are going to want to know how your building will be compliant in 2030. The same as they want to know how your building is compliant with Local Law 11, and if it's not, what the cost will be to be compliant. So although Local Law 11 is rather simple compared to Local Law 97, because you know how much a facade is going to cost you to fix, you can get 1 or 2 or 3 quotes on it, and then you'll know pretty much where you're going to be. Local Law 97 is way more cumbersome than that. And there is no one quick answer or one silver bullet that, so to speak, puts Local Law 97 to bed. There's multiple factors that need to be taken into account to be compliant with Local Law 97. And none of those are quick fixes. And they all take years to do and years to implement and years to prove. Latitude Compliance will be able to do those studies, come up with the potential answers to how you'll be compliant. And let's say a building comes up and says, okay, you got to change your windows in order to be compliant. Well, how do I know that the windows that I'm going to change with will actually be compliant? So being that Latitude is part of companies that, which is Promont is the main company, and we have Latitude and we have SmartCon. SmartCon is a building information modeling company. So we're able to take the information from your building and put in the specs of the new windows that you're going to be installing and actually run that in the virtual world to prove that the new windows that you're going to be installing are actually going to work or not work. So that can potentially save you millions and millions of dollars. So we're not only going to give you a solution as to how to be compliant with Local 97, we're also going to provide the data and the backup to prove that whatever that solution is actually going to work. Unfortunately for all of us, and just the nature of the beast is that all that takes a lot of time. So you can't wake up December 25th, 2029 and say, okay, now I got to be compliant with 2030. Nor can you wake up January 1st, 2023 and say, okay, now I got to be compliant with 2024. So all this takes a long time, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're talking about it now.
Exactly. Thank you, Marty. That really breaks it down, like how critical it is that we need to be thinking about this right now. And also just to, I guess, strengthen this point is that even if you think you know what I just spoke about 97, recently there's just been a new update. So it's constantly changing. They just released it's a bit more than 60 property types. So instead of using those building types, now we can assume property types. But the issue with this is, although it seems like you can play around with that, the carbon caps just got stricter. So now you need to comply with those. Also, the deadlines got stricter. Now we're talking about every 5-year deadline. There's going to be a new carbon cap, and they're expecting that after 2050, you're still being in compliance, and they plan on you being net zero at that point. So it keeps getting more aggressive. So why should you care? Obviously, it's expensive if you don't care. So we're talking about a failure to file your report, 50 cents per square foot per month. And we're talking about gross here. Exceeding your emissions limit, 268 per metric ton over the building's limit. And if you provide a false statement, then it's $500,000 and imprisonment. So let's do a little bit of like a breakdown of a typical residential building, which is about 150,000 square foot. This building is aiming for a 2030 goal, and they're emitting around like 8.25 kg of CO2, and they're aiming for this 4.07 2030 goal. And they filed about 4 months late. So there's two separate things there. So for exceeding their emissions, they have around $168,000, and that's an annual fee. But it gets even more intense because they filed late, it's a $300,000 fee. So it's worth it to just report this, because this is where the expense comes in from not reporting.
But what about, Adina, what about the expense of implementing all of these changes? Is there something that you would be able to help the landlords coming up with the financing for that? I think that you had mentioned that. Yeah,
completely. Because, for example, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but there is so much incentives that we can tap into, so many programs that can help finance the retrofit that we might need to do for your building. Obviously, it depends on per that building is, but it might actually be, most of it 70% or 100%. There's a lot of incentives out there depending on your building. We can get that finance.
That's something Latitude can help someone with. So it's important to know that not just are penalties expensive, but even the retrofitting is expensive. But the retrofitting may be expensive, but that expense will pay you off.
Yeah.
And for one, there's financing, and for two, is the expense will pay you off in running a smarter building.
And the turnkey, that brings in the turnkey solution that Latitude offers, Mark, to your point, is that we look at it not only from the sense of what needs to be done on the environmental level and on the compliance level, we also look at it as to from the construction end, being that our background is construction and development. If let's say we're faced with two potential fixes, we can analyze that with the experience that we have as to which potential fix will be easier to implement with an occupied building, which potential fix may cost a little bit more upfront, but will last longer and give you more of endurance. And into that case, we become completely turnkey. We're able to look at the entire picture, whereas opposed to, you know, other contractors out there may not be able to have the experience to fully analyze your building and fully analyze the potential fix to deliver a true turnkey solution together with financing it as well.
So just to give you one statement that you can take home with you, besides all the other great things being said by Marty, Adina, and Sarah, remember one thing: Latitude and Mark Hertz company are here to look at the entire forest, not just at one tree, and to service you in the full way, in the best way for you, tailor-made for your building.
Well said.
Exactly. I'll second that. I can't say it better, so. Now we'll get into what our 13 phases of compliance is. I'll pass this on to Sarah.
Yeah, so we'll actually just kind of build off of this conversation that we just had here, where basically at Latitude, we've developed 13 phases of compliance. And the idea here is that from the beginning till the end of meeting compliance for your building, we will be with you every step of the way. And to provide kind of a general overview, we'll get into more detail with this as we go on. But as you can see, this is a multi-step process and you'll never feel confused or alone. And we're kind of the experts here providing the background knowledge on the local laws and also the best steps for your building to meet compliance.
So when we set out with the 13 phases, I don't think we had this in mind, but it did hit me that, you know, a Jewish child becomes bar mitzvah at 13. So every child looks forward to the day he turns 13 where all the gifts come in. So in this case, when you reach the 13th phase, your gift will be that you have a completely compliant building. And with Mark Hertz's help, everything will be filed properly and you won't have any violations and you'll be able to go on and enjoy the investment that you made in your building. So mazel tov.
Well said.
Yes, and that's technically how we came up with our 13 phases, is we looked at the concept of a person and a building, just like a person gets sick and they go see a doctor. A building also, if you notice you're starting to have inhabitants that are not feeling so well, or your mechanical system's not working, usually it's integrated with something else. You should go see an energy professional or some Latitude, you know, to assess the building and say like, what's going on? Because usually how it works is the same way like a body is like your building has, you know, the same way like a person has a structure, it has a plumbing system, it has, you know, mechanical systems, different things that make it function. And that, let's say you have a building and it has a leak and you don't treat it properly, what ends up happening, you can get mold in your building, you can get structural failures. It's all interconnected. So when we look at this from Latitude's point of view, we see it as a whole building approach. So we'll assess it in that's how we assess it in our 13 phases.
So we'll start now by breaking down some of the steps of the 13 phases. And as you can see here, we have our first 3. We'll start with benchmarking, and benchmarking is done to meet compliance with local laws 84 and 133, which just mandates that all buildings over 25,000 square feet benchmark their annual energy and water usage. And then a part of that is also local law 3395, where you are mandated to post your energy grade from your benchmark to the front of your building. And then after that, we'll move forward with more building assessments to kind of identify more local laws that we should address given the specific data on your building. And then also working towards collecting the ASHRAE 1 and 2 data and looking at your building's existing conditions, the demographics, the envelope, the mechanical systems, anything that we need to kind of check all of those boxes.
And we understand that buildings in general everyone is different. So you may have benchmarked already, but you may not have done your ASHRAE, or you maybe did a site inspection, but you haven't benchmarked. So do we understand there is flexibility with these 13 phases? But the most important thing is when we assess it, we think of like the whole building approach, right? So when we're also testing the inside of the building, we're testing the interior quality back to like, is there, you know, mold in my HVAC, stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, you're spending 90% or more of your time indoors. And this is pre-COVID, stats. So the end of the day is we really want to improve that indoor air quality, and also, tenant satisfaction. This is to just improve the indoor health of all the occupants inside of the building.
If I can just interject, keep in mind, when benchmark came about, it was buildings 50,000 square feet or greater. And that law has been made more stringent,
Yes,
as the rest of these laws, just so that people have that recollection back to when benchmark first began.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to see the laws getting more stricter. I think people are hoping that the laws will eventually disappear, but we're seeing the opposite.
But that's unrealistic,
Yeah,
as we have seen.
yeah.
yeah.
And continuing on with our 13 phases, so we'll continue to gather more information on your building and by conducting like building site analyses and having someone physically go to the building. And by doing this, we're really like creating customized plans based on your building needs. And by having that data, we can identify the best retrofit option for your building and then move on towards identifying the best subcontractors to complete the proper services that you need done. And I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but there are ways to kind of get incentives and find alternative pathways towards like things like carbon offsets or RECs. And so by doing this kind of more in-depth analysis of your building, we're able to gather that information and determine the best solution for you.
And yeah, so that's one of the things that we think about is different renewable energies. It could be solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, hydropower, and even these can be, on-site, off-site. And then even if you don't even have this program in on-site or off-site, you can even invest in like renewable energy credits or RECs. This is still a developing program. I know in the updates they mentioned how to calculate this, but it's still developing. But we are following the news to see exactly how it's going to play out.
But on the RECs part, it's not looking very good for the idea that a New York City property owner can somehow purchase RECs and move on with his daily life and not have to worry about it. The city council is not very up to allowing that to happen, and it seems that they will be restricting that more and more and making that so cumbersome that it probably won't end up making sense. So if you're sitting back and thinking that I'll just purchase RECs and be compliant and not have to worry about everything else that goes into my building, I think that's a foolish concept that will probably not end up working out for anybody going that direction.
Just to add to Marty's statement, according to Crane's New York Business, there are not enough RECs to be purchased at the present time, and there probably won't be for a few years. That's even when they are purchasable, number one. Number two is, out of approximately 100 buildings that filed for RECs, I think they only approved 10 or thereabouts. Right, because of how cumbersome it is and how few there are available. So someone that thinks they could sit on their laurels and wait for RECs and then say, have a good day is not happening so soon.
Right. And even in addition, the RECs that that we've been reading, I think it's about like 15% or less that it can counteract what your fines are. And even if you purchase RECs, it's only going to last up until that compliance period. So up until 2030, then it's depreciating over time. So it's more valuable when you first bought it. So in terms of an investment, it doesn't seem a good idea.
Like a great investment.
Yeah, it's like a car driving out of the showroom before COVID, not today.
Yeah. And then we get into a whole other issue, which is your carbon of your building. How do we manage that? So it's like your operational carbon and your embodied carbon. So either it's electrifying and upgrading your systems, and renewable energy, which I mentioned before. There's RECs and that whole complicated issue. We also started to notice in the law, they started leaving room for carbon offsets. Again, this is new. We don't know how this is going to play around with it, but it's basically sucking out carbon from the air or from your machine and kind of not emitting it anymore or storing it forever somewhere. And then there's EPDs, which we've been noticing it's coming a new fad where it's environmental product declarations. It's kind of like a nutrition facts of global warming potentials of your products that you're using in your building or materials.
So continuing on with our 13 phases, these next couple of steps kind of show you the financing aspect. And so again, building off of what we mentioned earlier, we do spend a lot of time looking for the best incentives out there. There are so many incentives, and I think just having someone who has spent a lot of time researching them and collecting a list of them is really great. And that's what we offer you through our services. And then after we've identified the route that you want to go in terms of doing the retrofits and meeting compliance, then we'll actually help you with designing the best kind of framework for what you need to do, and then working towards actually filing all of the reports and getting that approval that's necessary, and then also doing the estimating and bidding and budgeting that's required to complete your project.
So in all truth, there was really, as I tell my clients, there's nothing that I do that you can't probably do yourself. But quit your day job if you're going to try to do it yourself. And forget about going to the gym, and forget about going out to lunch, or whatever the case may be. The same thing, there's nothing your accountant does that you can't do yourself,
Yeah.
but you're not the expert. Latitude are the experts at helping with the financing, helping with design, doing the reports in advance, seeing what is needed, and in conjunction has brought in our office to help you with the DOB approval and those issues.
Yes.
A quick story out of a friend of mine who was a big importer of products from China, and he was selling it to a big client. So the big client tells him, well, why do I have to pay you? I can go to China and do the same thing. He says, you sure can. The only difference is you could get the product and I have the product. So that's the only difference.
Well said, well said.
So yeah, and in addition, like, that's really what, you know, in Latitude, we research and we've done all that we're the experts of all the local laws, ESG related for New York City. So this is just some of the local laws that we've highlighted here, but we're talking about, you know, obviously we have also 87, retro commissioning, and LL11 and facade inspections, anything ESG related, we will package that together and assess your building. And while we're at it, like, if we're anyway solving a problem, we're going to come up with a solution that solves many problems at one shot.
So do you mean you're like the old style doctors when they did a physical, they did the physical from head to toe, not today when it's departmentalized medicine? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's why we mentioned the
Old school medicine.
sick person, sick, yeah,
My, is that refreshing? Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
And so just to wrap up our process, we've like made all of these plans and we've discussed the financing and the budgeting, and now we'll actually see through that the project is executed correctly and efficiently. And then as a result of that, you will be in compliance and you'll have a huge weight off of your shoulders. And then that kind of leads to the next point, which is also annual monitoring. So for a lot of these local laws, it's not just a one thing that you submit and it's over. It's kind of something that needs to be done every year, or every 5 years, or whatever it may be. And so we'll also stick around for that as well. And the whole point that we want to make here is that with Latitude Compliance and with these 13 phases, it's a one-stop shop. So we'll address all the local laws that we can, and also take care of all of the headache of it. So
I think that's an important part of where Latitude Compliance comes in with the partnership with Mark Hertz Company, is that, you know, sort of dealing with the city regulations and filing standards and paperwork is a sort of a standalone animal that needs to be treated with respect and constantly fed. And that's where our relationship with Mark Hertz comes in and solidifies our ability to be able to not only create the solutions, but to make sure that those solutions are properly filed, and that you don't get fined for something that you already did but forgot to file with the city, which would be a very sad occurrence.
Marty, that sounds great. You sound like me. You never work a day in your life. If you enjoy what you do,
That's right.
it's not called working.
So, and I guess now we're starting, thank you all for joining our short presentation on, carbon emissions and a little bit about Local 97 and how it affects you and your business. And now we're kind of opening up our roundtable, and we're gonna enable the chat. So you can start asking questions, but I know that for now, we had some questions that were pre-submitted and we're gonna target those first. And then the questions in the chat we will deal with afterwards, but feel free to write any questions that you may have.
So I'll start with going over some of the pre-submitted questions that some of our attendees submitted. And so we do have a question from Nora asking, what will local law 97 require of us? So I know we went into a lot of detail just now, but maybe a nice short and sweet answer.
I actually have a one-word answer, and that's a lot.
Yeah, okay, but that's true. That's true. Fortunately or not, but that's true.
Yeah,
But the facts are that local law 97 will require, without a question, some work to be done at the various buildings, whether it be commercial building or residential building, whether it be a store or it be an office building. It really doesn't make a difference. It's going to require work to be done, even if it's a house of worship or buildings that are initially exempt, but will phase in later. There's going to be physical work that has to be done. To do physical work, there's the assessment first, then there's the physical, then there's the design, then there's the physical work. But before you get to the physical work, there's also the approval from the Department of Buildings, whoever it may be, unless one likes to have violations and support the city of New York. And I'm sure Mayor Adams will send them a thank you note and be very appreciative. But that obviously means they don't like to keep their money in their pocket, which is not most people's goal. And I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic a little bit, but it requires compliance, and compliance is something that we jointly have been doing for many years. I know I started doing compliance. I had a full head of hair. That ship has sailed. But you know, and we enjoy doing it, and I know Marty enjoys doing it as well, because Marty and I know each other for a long time. And
I think while I still had hair.
there's one of us. So in answer to Nora, it will require a lot of work. You really have to get into the thick of it, and you have to get into the quicksand, and you may have to get into the quicksand up to your waist, not just up to your knees.
Yeah.
But the way to do that is to do it strategically, smartly, so that you keep the money in your pocket and you don't do it foolishly and do things that are not part of the requirement or are not going to benefit you in the long run.
And also, I think that was something that I don't think that we mentioned is quite important, because I had someone reach out to me privately and ask me a question. Well, I have a brand new building that I just completed and I got a D rating. So it's a misconception to think that if you just finished a building, you recently completed a building, let's say in the past year or two or 3 or 4, that you're automatically in compliance. It's actually quite the contrary is true. And some of the new construction methods that have been being used in the city for the past number of years don't actually deliver the energy savings that were anticipated, either because it wasn't installed correctly or it's not being used correctly. And some of those fixes may be simple, and maybe as much as scheduling some of your equipment. It could be a piece of equipment that costs a few $100s to a few $1,000s to install, and all of a sudden you're in compliance. So it's not necessarily that the work that needs to be done is a very expensive fix, but the thing is that if you go out to market and you think that one thing is the problem and you go and you fix it, hoping that that will put you in compliance, that may not work out, and you just wasted a whole lot of money and gotten absolutely nowhere on the compliance level. So that's the reason that we came up with this idea, and that's the reason that we are here, is to make sure that whatever you do will actually work and will actually deliver the level of compliance that you need to achieve in order to be in compliance.
For the long run.
Correct.
And just to add on to that, not posting your letter grade is, that's local law 33, and a violation of that is an annual fee of like $1,250. So that's just a waste of money for something that you may not even know about. And so by, working with Latitude, we kind of know all of those local laws, we know the penalties involved. And so that's just one less thing that you have to worry about. But moving on to the next question, we have a question from David, who asked how this law will affect retail brick and mortar shopping malls.
Well, as the city came out with in October, the 10 different occupancy groups that there are, and they are on here, more shopping malls and brick and mortar locations are on here, and they can be subject to the same penalties, and those penalties get stiff. So I think most people would like to run their buildings in the black, not in the red. So if one wants to, the way to do it is to jump on the bandwagon now have your assessments done by Latitude, have reviewed, see what is needed, see what is going to get you compliant, so that at the end of the day, your building will be running in the black and your building will make money, instead of having a building that's a loss leader, because nobody really wants that.
And it's also good for business because, when I think Mayor Bloomberg was that came up with the restaurant grading system, everybody knocked it. But when the restaurants actually worked hard to get their ratings to come up, they saw an increase in business because people that wanted to eat in an establishment that was being run well chose that establishment over the establishment down the block that had, let's say, they chose the establishment that had an A for a grade rather than the one down the block that had a B for a grade, and that helped business. Same thing holds true for these buildings because, the reason that some of the landlords ask the question of what happens if they don't post a grade is because they found that if they do post a grade and it's a bad grade, then potential tenants come to the building and turn around and walk out the door because they don't want to live in a building that has such a bad grade. Sometimes it's because they understand what the grade reflects, and sometimes it's just they don't understand what it reflects, but they know that it ain't a good building if they got such a mark. So having a high rating on the building will actually be good for business because of the law that New York City established, and because of the publication of the law and the publicity of the law. People know what to look out for, and having a good grade will get you more tenants, better tenants, and it will be an easier time for you to rent out your building.
Just to add to that, as a sidebar, my office recently put out an explanation of what the grade level means. Of course, if I was going out to dinner tonight, I would not go to a place that has a C or a D or a B in the window, because I don't like to eat rodents or have unclean plates, pots and pans, etc. But on the other hand, the letter grade for your building is not necessarily a reflection on the management end of it or the cleanliness of the building to some degree. It could be caused by tenants in the building, whether it be residential or commercial, that don't have LED lighting, which will help them for local 97 as well, that are letting they don't have aerators on their faucets to reduce the amount of water coming out or on the toilets, etc. And that are using, for argument's sake, in a residential apartment, they're using their gas stove to heat their apartment because they're cold. So it's not a reflection on the management, it's a reflection on sometimes the tenancy. But if you work with your tenancy and you educate your tenancy and you make yourself into a smart building, it will be a benefit. And if one wants to see the posting we put out, they can see it on LinkedIn or on our website. It's something that you can post next to your letter grade.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, because a lot of, we've had a lot of people reaching out to us saying like, why am I getting fined for something? My tenant is the problem. I gave them a low flow, toilets and LED lighting, and I installed it for them, but they just took it out. And now I have to suffer, the building owner and the management companies, they're the ones that are they're paying the fines. It's not the tenant. The tenant doesn't care. They open all their windows, have the heat running. It doesn't matter to them. So this is really an issue that's been going on, but because it's being filed, even in condos as well, it's being filed as one building, even though there's multiple owners. There is complicated of shared responsibility here, and every time there's shared responsibility, you get failed problems. So yeah, that's something that I know that Latitude for sure works with a building owner or a management company to figure out a owner-tenant agreement or plan where we try to figure out how to incentivize the client, like the tenant, to why they should keep it. Or
and sometimes it's not even incentivizing. Sometimes it's not that the tenant doesn't care. I think New York City has a very high population level of people that do care about the environment. It's that they just sometimes are uneducated to the compliance and the reason that the law was instituted to begin with. And sometimes simple education of things that they can do that can help goes a long way, and not necessarily do you have to, force them to do that with monetary fines or other ways to actually comply. Sometimes it's just simple education can get them to go a long way.
100%.
I think Marty sounds like Cy Sims. An educated consumer is our best customer. An educated tenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on us, on the owners, and on us to educate them.
Yes, that's the main thing, is what I think when you have that conversation with them and you're opening a dialogue saying, we're kind of working on this together, you can come up with a game plan that's actually going to work.
Yeah, so I think we have one other question from the pre-submitted questions. And I know we kind of already spoke about this, maybe just talk about it a little bit more, but Aaron asked if he can have his staff do some of the required work, and then how would he document that?
He can definitely have his required work. He definitely can. He can also file his own tax return.
Yeah.
He can also give himself a haircut. He can also do his own eye examination.
And manufacture products in China.
And manufacture products in China. He could be his own cardiologist as well. He probably cleans his suit after he comes in from the rain by himself as well, and does his own shoemaking. Can anyone do everything themselves realistically? No. Did he build his own house? Does he fill his own oil tank or provide his own gas? It's an unrealistic thought. I mean, while I respect Aaron, whoever he may be, it's an unrealistic thought that one person can do everything. We don't live in the Stone Age where they did everything themselves. They milked their own cow. They pasteurized, well, they didn't pasteurize the milk, I don't even want to say that. Okay, they slaughtered their own animals. It's not the way things are today. You want to go to the experts that are going to do it better, quicker, and at a reasonable price where it makes sense than to do it all yourself.
And also on a more practical level, to answer that question, I mean, the companies that we both run are companies that are staffed by tremendous professionals and people that are professionals within a specific part of their industry and a specific part of the compliance, specific part of the filing that's required. So even myself and Mark, we don't have all the answers on a personal level that can answer every question that you may have and every question that Local 97 could bring up. But we have amazing people that work for us that do have collectively the ability to do that. So one person, even if he wanted to set out and do that, or one team in one office that wanted to set out and do that, you probably could get there, but realize that we've spent literally years building up to where we are right now. And those years were 12-hour workdays and a tremendous amount of capital that was spent on getting to where we are right now. And if you were to do that with your team, although you may be successful, it will take a long time. And during that time, they won't be doing what you've hired them to do to begin with before Local 97, entered your conscience. So the answer in short is no. And the long part of it, I think we've pretty much gone through.
Are you saying we only work 12 hours? I just want to, I think we're coming to an end, but I just want to tell you a story with Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, when he started Bloomberg LP, he used to go office building to office building, in an office building and go office to office. The story I read, he used to go office to office, knocking on doors and trying to solicit people's business. And they would ask him questions. And he would say, I don't know, but I will get back to you. Because he had the experts in his office, or the experts that knew where to get the answer. Nobody knows every answer. Nobody has all the knowledge of the entire gamut of all the laws. Remember, these laws are not passed by one person. These laws are passed by numerous people sitting around, whether it's a city council or it's a committee that they formed, etc. Nobody has every answer. But if we know the source, where to get them. So, Marty and I might not know everything, and Adina and Sarah, you might not know everything and every nuance, but you know where to get the answer. And when we say jointly, when we say we're going to get back to you, that is not an empty promise. And when you want to be treated, the client wants to be treated, is not as a number. You want to be treated as an individual. And that's a service that you're going to get from Latitude and Margaret's company.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, that's a great way to end our first monthly roundtable. And I know since we started a little late, we do want to be respectful of people's times. So we did want to provide this information. So if you do want to reach out to us, either Latitude or Mark Hertz company, here's our contact information here. And we will be sending out a recording of this webinar, so you can have it on record or share it with anyone else who you think might be interested. And just keep in mind, we do have additional dates, so you can also share that information with anyone in your network who you think may benefit from attending this webinar in the future.
We'll also publicize a little bit later today the winner of the iPad. And we thank you all for participating and appreciate your time and look forward to doing business with you. Mark, thank you for coming.
Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again and to doing work with you. And if you want to hear more about this, Please join us December 15th, 2022. Same time, I think, same bat channel, same bat station, as they used to say in the good old Batman days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everyone.
day, be successful.